Fouch, Regional Fixed Operations Manager here in the Central Region. And with me, my counterpart is Jerry O'Sullivan. Jerry, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining us.
We appreciate you taking the time this morning. For those that weren't able to catch up on our regional go-to-market meeting, which we have the first Thursday of every month, we decided to, since we have all this activity around our recently announced news regarding electric vehicles, that we wanted to take some time and spend with our fixed operations team. And actually, a lot of dealers are on board, and even our sales district managers are online as well with us. But take away some of the, we call it debunking the myths regarding the electrification of the Kia brand, and really more so than anything else, because our CEO has come out with a strong plan to change us from a motors company to mobility. And that involves everything from, obviously electrification and what we want to do there, but to really move the brand to the next stages in our evolution, really. So the first thing I wanted to show you, that Jerry and I would like to show you first, is just the concept of the electrification. And the concept is our Kia Imagine concept vehicle. And if you give me 1 second, I just gotta get over here. There we go. And these are the concepts of what we've seen as our newly designed electric vehicle, codenamed CV, but these are the concept vehicles, or the concept drawings and structures that they put together for it. It came out in 2019, September 2019, but we wanted to show you that the renderings of what it looks like, and we're pretty sure it's going to be close to that, especially with a lot of the spy photos that are out there. But debunking the myths, let's take away some of the myths, right? So Merriam-Webster defines debunk as exposing the sham or falseness of. And what we want to do is let's take some facts, all right? The first fact we see here is that EVs don't have enough range, and that's something that customers say. That's something even our own internal people and dealers say. EVs don't have enough range, and you can't travel very far. And how am I going to get this vehicle charged? Well, let's face facts. Here's the number one. Americans drive an average of 40 miles a day, and according to the U.S. Department of Transportation, that's this year alone, even the shortest range electric vehicle can travel more than twice the distance, which means travel more than 40 miles, before needing to be tethered to the power grid, meaning be charged, obviously, right? And the 2020 Niro has an estimated EPA range of 239 miles. That gives it 6 days, if you think about that, 6 days of driving before a recharge is needed, which really, if you think about it, that's not too bad, especially if you're only going 40 miles. But okay, so we have customers that drive into Chicago here, and it's a 120 mile round trip. Let's just say that, for example. All right, so 120 miles, you're at half that. Okay, so then you have to plug it in when you get home. And I'm going to cover that in just a couple seconds as well. The myth here is that EVs are too expensive. And here's the fact. The battery costs are expected to drop dramatically in the next coming years. And really what we're seeing is most EVs are premium priced, and we know that, especially if you look at the Niro EV, but when you start comparing it to other EVs, it is in the ballpark. However, something that is really good for Kia and the Niro right now, especially the 2020 Niro, is they may qualify for the one-time $7,500 federal tax credit granted to EV buyers, and we suggest you seeing the federal rules and guidelines. And when we get to the resources tab at the end, you'll see some of the resources being the links to the federal government to show customers how much they can get in federal tax credits. Some more myths. EVs won't save money in operating costs based on today's gas prices. Well, to tell you the truth, it's actually better for the customer to drive an EV than an internal combustion engine. And what do I mean by that? So right now, based on current gas prices, and I paid $2.78 for a gallon of gas this morning, and if you see, well, let's just say that's reasonable or relatively affordable, it's cheaper to keep an electric car running. So if you take the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency's current 2020 Niro EV cost to drive for 25 miles is 98 cents. That equates to $600 per year to traverse 15,000 miles on the current average electricity rates. That equates to a $4,500 savings that the average vehicle EV owner will spend less in fuel over a 5-year period. That's dramatic. That's dramatic for consumers to see that. The other thing is, if you look at a maintenance perspective, the maintenance perspective is that there's a lot less moving parts, a lot less things that can break, and a lot less maintenance. And we're going to cover that in just a little bit as well. The other myth is EV batteries don't last long. That's a fallacy. Electric vehicles are federally mandated to carry a minimum of 8 years or 100,000 miles. The Nero EVs, the 2020 Nero EVs powertrain warranty is 10 years or 100,000 miles. And it has a segment leading basic warranty of 60 months or 60,000 compared to Tesla, the Chevrolet, and the Nissan, all underneath those ranges. So that's an important factor too when you look at the benefits of what the Nero offers compared to consumers. Now, I'm not trying to sell you features and benefits on a Nero, but I'm trying to point out some of these myths and how they relate to Kia, especially with the Nero right now, and then the new vehicles coming down the pipeline, which will have faster charging rates too. And I'll cover that again in a minute. So here's the other thing. EVs are costly to maintain and repair, and that is a big fallacy. I already mentioned that they have less moving parts. If you take a 4-cylinder Sportage as an example, of front-wheel drive, compared to a Nero front-wheel drive, you have almost 240 moving parts on a Sportage, and you have 24 moving parts on a Nero. And you can see with less parts moving, less probable breakage, and also less maintenance. And again, I'm going to cover that in a minute. Not only is that a myth, but the lower cost to maintain is a reality, and something that I'm going to cover with you in just a minute, because it's a reality that we have to face, and something if we don't start planning now, that we're going to run into problems with our revenue streams collectively and what we're going to be able to do for customers. And that's where Jerry's going to cover a lot of ideas that we've collected over the last couple of months to help you prepare. The other thing here is the myth is the cost to install a home charger is thousands of dollars. That's a fallacy as well. And like battery costs, residential charger costs have dropped in pricing, with most states offering rebates or discounts. I've got the details on that. Right now, the best charger cost that I found for a level 2 charger is $469. That doesn't include any state incentives or any other rebates available for some of those states, but also that there's rates that the certain vendors in states, the electrical providers, have rate charges and supplements to consumers as well. Now, the only thing here that I don't have, which is extremely variable, is the installation cost of the charger. However, we will provide you resources for some vendors that actually have it built into their chargers to contract with someone at a discounted rate for consumers. So you can take advantage of that as well. But the whole point here is to guide the customer through the entire process. Take away the myths, take away the uneasiness, and build the trust with the customer, because you're going to need that trust for them to come back in long term. So here's the other myth, and this is a big one, and this is something that I think we all need to be completely aware of. There's nowhere to charge my EV. Well, there is. If you look at just, and I'm going to say 5 years ago, there were 20,000 chargers nationally available, and I mean banks of chargers. And now there's over 50,000 chargers in less than, 3 years. And if you look at every green dot that's there, every green dot is less than 239 miles. So you know your Nero EV can go from point to point and get a charge no matter where they go. It was amazing to see this, but this is directly from the federal government's website to locate chargers. And not only that, but now with the Nero EV, the 2020 Nero EV, we have apps that customers can download to not just find a charging station, but it will do it based on mileage set preferences based on how the vehicle's running. It's a really neat system. And the Nero EV also has both Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant available to help you guide as you're driving the vehicle or the customer's driving the vehicle. So that's kind of something that is a big myth, but it's also a point for you to address with customers when they're either in the mood to buy a vehicle or in, somewhere in their life cycle, but also to talk to service customers about it as well, especially if it's a new customer coming in the door. So let me clarify a couple things. So if you take the first year of ownership, I know I said that the fuel savings was $4,500 over 5 years, but let's just assume you want to take that into account right now, right? Now, this is first year. This doesn't include any of the incentives we have for buying the vehicle right now, which we have a lot. Nathan covered that yesterday when we presented it. And if you have questions on the current incentives, you can talk to your district sales manager. They'd be glad to walk you through what we're currently offering. So if I take the current federal tax incentive, not including any state, and I believe, and I'll cover that in just a minute, and the fuel cost minus the cost of the home charger. And here's the fact: tire rotations, 6,500 miles. That's it. Cabin air filter, that's it. Wiper blades, that's it. I mean, you're sitting on $100 in 1 year's maintenance on an EV. Scary proposition. So if the Nero EV has a requirement to have the tires rotated 6,500 miles, how are you going to prepare? So simply explained, this isn't a net. We're calling it a subtotal. It's $10,400 for the customer. So that's substantial. Now, that's why I said you take into account what they purchased the vehicle for, and now you can start playing with the customer going, there's some legitimacy to wanting to buy an EV vehicle that's going to save the customer long term. So think of that. Let me clarify one other item. I already mentioned it. We're going to experience a 40 to 50% reduction in service revenue based on EV visits. Remember, like I said, there's less moving parts. Here's the fact: the 2020 Nero EV severe maintenance schedule. Every visit, right? Every visit is an MPI inspection. Hopefully you'll find something. But again, that's the point of building trust with the customer, right? I mentioned tire rotation, 6,500 miles. There's something called gear reduction gear oil replacement that needs to happen at 36,000 miles. So you have 3 years there. Now go into the low conductivity coolant. Yes, there's a low conductivity coolant. And by the way, if you don't have a technician that knows how to do it, you might want to think about that right now, because that isn't a simple procedure either. Then you have your standard coolant that gets replaced at 120,000 miles. So really, what is your offer to the customer? And what is your plan to retain customers? Because we have to start thinking about that now. Right, Jared?
Yep.
Brings us into our future. Right, Jared?
And it's an ambitious plan to be a major contender, but that's what Plan S is all about. EV and mobility solutions, as Walter mentioned, with respect to where Kia Motors is going to. We're a mobility company. First dedicated EV model, which is codenamed the CV. That global launch is happening later this month, with a U.S. launch happening later this year by the end of the fourth quarter. We're going to have 11 EVs globally by 2025, and our goal is to have reach that share of 20% of Kia sales from eco-friendly vehicles by the end of 2025. So it's coming. Your sales departments, their metrics, their objectives are going to be based on a 20% share of and a 20% contribution from EV vehicles. It's a future-oriented, user experience, and single charge ranges up to and over 300 miles with a sub 20-minute high-speed charge time. Walter mentioned this yesterday, and this is from our launch strategy. Plan S is a bold and enterprising roadmap for Kia's future business. It's a transition. It's buttressed by 2 pillars of electric vehicles and mobility solutions. So that's where we're headed. It's really the future, and we need everybody, to hop on board. Next slide, Walter. So DBEV charger supports. The invitations went out to all the dealers to acknowledge their EV enrollment. There is a financial reimbursement for up to a maximum of $12,000 for your 2 chargers. Obviously, it's based on dealer compliance. Right now, in the short term, here's what we need to do. We need to trigger the order of the necessary special tools, and that has to be done by April 30th. The sooner, the better. And that acknowledgement is also of the terms and conditions of KMA's reimbursement. We need to complete all the necessary web-based training by May 15th. Complete the web-based, that will trigger the vehicle assignment in the vehicle request system. That way we can get you the vehicle for the technician to do the virtual instructor-led training. And then we need to have the chargers installed by September 30th. Again, the sooner the better. And then with the allocation and purchase of 3 Nero EVs from KMA at wholesale. And then there'll be a claim form to submit once all these criteria are met. Next slide, Walter. So charger requirements. You need a quantity of 1 for the DC fast charger, which is a 2.5 or above, or a level 2 charger. And again, there's opportunities. We have Snap-on that is supporting this, but it is really your discretion where to get the components, provided they meet our criteria. And then you're going to have the charger locations where we need the DC fast charger intended for the technicians and delivery. And that should be in the Kia service area, as well as the level 2 charger that is mounted in the Kia service area. You need a good idea is a portable level 2 charger that can be moved between bays so that you have that flexibility. And your DPSMs have a good amount of information on this if you have any questions on it. Next slide. So with EV training, so requirement, the minimum requirement is 2 sales consultants, your parts manager, your service manager, 2 technicians, and 1 service consultant. The best practice, though, is everybody gets trained. We know that there's an opportunity for turnover at certain times. Everybody needs to be trained. Everybody needs to be that resource and that resident expert in your dealership. Again, with the special tools, the moment that the dealership acknowledges the enrollment, your special tools will be shipped. We're going to be looking at, there's a number of different opportunities, but keep in mind there is a promotional package for the special tools that are being shipped. The MSRP is over $8,000, but dealer cost is under $6,800. So it's a great opportunity. Just to let you know what are in the package, again, there's a number of special tools that'll be shipped the moment the dealer hits acknowledge, and that's in addition to the required chargers. Next slide, Walter. So Walter talked about it before, is we have to prepare for that revenue generation, and that starts with the sales to service handoff. Once we attract that EV buyer, we actually have to figure a way to retain these new Kia customers long term, because we know the required maintenance isn't going to do it. So we have to figure out a way on that first introduction to service at the time of sale, and then schedule their first visit. It's simple, but it's often overlooked. The 3 boxes on the right are essentially just setting up the maintenance intervals in the car. And the point in reference, that should be done on all vehicles that have the opportunity to have the maintenance minder set, not just the EVs, but for today's purposes, we want to make sure that that maintenance minder is set. It sets the foundation for that first positive service relationship. It involves both sales and service with the customer during the initial interaction, and it's the first step towards that long-term customer loyalty. It minimizes customer defection, and with that first appointment, we roll out the red carpet. Get your BDC involved in this process as well with a follow-up to make sure that the customer is aware of when their appointment is, and it gets that reminder. Next slide. So the other portion of revenue generation opportunities is accessory sales. Allow the customer to personalize their vehicle. Again, the range of these cars is significant to the point where customers will be taking these vehicles where they go. So we want to make sure we have accessories displays in the showroom, ideally on a vehicle. That's why we call it a showroom. Create those lifestyle packages for these EV customers. Accessories tailored to the green movement, bike racks, kayak. Great opportunities, all season mats and mud guards. Especially after the winter we've had here, anybody that sees a set of carpeted mats after 6 months, they are beaten up. Next slide, Walter. So the other way to create that long-term loyalty is with prepaid maintenance. And that's not just with EV, but for today's purposes, we've got to make sure we establish that connection with the customer and give them a reason to come back. It creates those repeat visits. It's going to minimize that defection. And we want to, here's what we have to do. Right now, we don't have much consideration from the aftermarket, but you know that's coming. We have to sell the value of going back to the dealership where truly and safely their technicians are capable of working on the vehicle. We are Kia. We built it. We designed it. Retention ensures that proper maintenance is going to be done, and certainly it improves and increases the value for future trade-in, and it incorporates them into your loyalty program. Next slide. So here's one of the biggest opportunities that seems to be overlooked these days, and the involvement of UVO and the Smart app is critical in getting that set up and inviting your customers back. It sets up the preferred dealership, but essentially when we do that, we are marrying the customer to the dealership. It sets up your dealership as the preferred place of business. Why wouldn't you want to invite them back? And then have service communicate with follow-up on the first visit, including charge functions and app usage. There is so much information available, especially on EV vehicles with respect to the UVO app, as Walter touched on before, about where to find charging stations, when to set up having the vehicle charged is critical. Next slide. So why service at your dealership? Why buy from your dealership? Well, here's what we need to look at is the idea of having charger banks. Yeah, we have the required minimum chargers for to be a certified EV dealer, but we have to think beyond that. We have to give the customers a reason to be coming back. So we want to combine those charge banks as an atmosphere for amenities with your lounge. Make the visits back to the dealership an event. That way they can come in anytime for a free charge, enjoy your coffee, your tea, look at the new products on your showroom floor, potential for an estimate for a trade-in, and then give them the opportunity while they're sitting there to have their car charged for referrals. Bottom line, we need a loyalty program, and that's going to boost your revenue 5 to 10% of the members of these programs, and they're spending 5 to 20% more than non-members. A service loyal customer is 4 times likely to purchase a second vehicle when satisfied, and we know the loyal customers are what makes the business last. There's lower acquisition costs because they're already doing business with your dealership. We truly need to own the customer from day one through sales and new service. Service reservation system through your BDC, it's critical in engaging these customers back with your service department on the phone, on the drive, on the web. What's your strategy going to be for promoting and inviting these customers back? What do we need to do today and what do we need to do tomorrow? We know that about 74% of the calls arriving at the dealership switchboards are for parts and service. And we know this because we get the recordings through our MarchX application. It records the calls and it lets us know what customers are calling in for. And despite these technology options, including online scheduling, customers are still a little slow right now to adopt the technologies as their preferred method. So maybe it's simpler to just click a call button on their mobile phone rather than going into the website. But either way, we have to be fully functional and convenient for whatever preferred method our customers want to do in order to do business with us. Next slide, Walter.
Sorry, Jer.
That's okay. So Walter's going to go through some of the resources by state, and then a brief overview, and then we'll really, most importantly, is get the Q&A to see if anybody has any questions or things that we can address.
Yeah, absolutely, Jared. Why don't you stay unmuted because I got some questions to you for you based on all the research. But please, as you're going through the questions, oops, let me go back up. I'm sorry. As we're going through this, feel free to ask the questions. Several questions are coming through, and Ryan Niplin asked 2 good questions, and we responded to those as well. We'll cover some of the Q&A just so everybody's clear if you're not seeing them come through. Now we're on to the resources section of the presentation, and really what I wanted to do here was just highlight quickly by state, and you can read these. And we're gonna have, like I said, we're gonna have this out on our YouTube channel, and you're gonna get a printed copy of this. And I know the district managers will send it out to you to see. Some of this is exactly what we shared yesterday. It's a little more broken up so you can have an easier feel of how it goes. But every state has something along the lines. And for those that have NA for both commercial and residential, as far as the chargers are concerned, charger manufacturers have a discount for those customers anyway. I'll cover that in a minute when we go into a live demo of how Jerry and I have gone into great lengths to find resources that can help your salespeople and your service people be the experts for customers. And that's really the point here. But you can see some of what amazed me was Minnesota. Minnesota has some absolutely incredible incentives. 9 electrical supply companies that are there, Jerry, and one of them had a discount if you use a wind turbine that charges your car. There was a significant discount on it. And so it's important that you become the expert. And, you know, Jerry and I and Nathan and Scott, we've done a lot of research to find out how this is going to impact us, meaning you, the dealers, so that we can be that resource as well. The other thing too, and this is a state-by-state breakdown. Again, I'm not going to go through all the details. Like, you know, unfortunately, Kentucky, like I said, didn't have anything, but these links are built into this presentation too. And Michigan's got a great one. Ohio's got a good one. And Ohio even had a grant program through the EPA, the Ohio EPA, that expired last September that I was unaware of, you were unaware of as dealers. I mean, so we've got to be more in tune with what's going on. Even the state of Illinois has a charger installation for a 0.5% loan for 60 months to those who, you know, participate in the Illinois Electric Co-op. So you can see that from there. But there's just some amazing things that are out there that we can help walk you through. And then here's the other 7 states. You can see Iowa, Missouri. Missouri didn't have a lot, although that for the consumer side of it, they do have something for Platt and Ameren offer incentives for the chargers. And then here was one thing that I really like. The state of Missouri has a discount for home builders and developers to have electric vehicles. Go figure. So not just when I say commercial, but also commercial around you, meaning those businesses that can take advantages of certain, you know, incentives within the state. Again, I'm going to cover that in just a minute too when we do a live demo of the search function on the federal site. So here's some of the resources again that we have. Again, the state, federal, and a couple other things here that we can show you. The federal site is on top. Then there's another one that I use regularly and Jerry's used. It's called clippercreek.com. They have chargers, and again, we'll cover that. And then you can see there's the fueleconomy.gov site, and then the different chargers that are out there. And one thing I wanted to point out is that the evgo.com, it has a membership site where, if you remember, take a Shell gas card, for example, they have a similar EV charge card that allows you to go in and plug that card in and gives you discounted rates. So I thought it was a brilliant, brilliant idea. So that's some of the resources we want to provide you. What else, Jared? What else am I missing before we jump into?
No, really, I think we could probably spend 3 hours going over the resources. And the one thing that we found over the last 90 days to 120 days is that all these are so changeable. More and more states are creating those types of incentives and those types of resources. So 6 months ago, we didn't have half these available resources to us. So it's essentially changing as we go along. And the one thing we want to just reiterate is that there are so many resources available right now that there's a significant amount of information that is an opportunity.
Absolutely. You know, and I threw this on here before we jump into Q&A. So this is the Alternative Fuels Data Center, and I've walked so many people through this site that it's become second nature to me, and we are going to get to your questions. I promise everybody that's jumping on there with questions. But if you take and just, instead of going, you can click on individual states, go to the search function. If you click on this search function, then you can come over here and it says, okay, now what can I do? And I'm just going to scroll down just a little bit so you can see. And realistically, if you wanted to plug in the federal, you can type federal there, or let's just take the state of Ohio as an example, or better yet, I'm going to do Minnesota. Just take the state of Minnesota, click Minnesota there, and then come down here to just technology fuel section and click on EVs. That's the very first thing I'd do. I'm going to leave the incentive and regulation category alone and jump over here to one of two areas. First thing is I'm going to either click on commercial or for a personal vehicle owner or driver. Now imagine anybody at the dealership walking a customer through this. So currently, just based on the Minnesota laws for incentives and laws related to fuels, alternative fuels, and advanced vehicles, you can see that there are 20 items, and this is right here for the state of Minnesota. But now I'm going to drill down just a little bit further. And the first thing I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to skip over the incentive and regulation section, and I'm going to click on just commercial. Now, one caveat when you do this, there are situations where both the incentives apply to a commercial customer and a personal customer, okay? Because they have a hard time differentiating here between commercial being the dealership and commercial being a builder, developer, or a consumer from that perspective. So now that I've selected commercial, I'm just going to click on the search button. And this is where you're going to need to have familiarity with the site, right? And this is where you can see that now I've got, based on the current incentives and regulations that are out there, I've got a initiative for plug-in for natural gas. That doesn't apply to this vehicle. And then I've got all electric vehicle fee. Okay, that's laws and regulations. And then I come down here to, wait, I've got a vehicle supply rebate. Let's click on that supply rebate. So right now, Connexus Energy offers commercial customers a rebate up to $2,000 for the purchase and installation of a level 2 charger. Eligible participants include public entities, workplaces, multifamily units, and fleets. Answer John Flanagan's question. So I'm not sure if that's really the case or not, but multifamily units or workplaces, sometimes they have it. So, and then you can click on here to go to the vehicle, electric vehicle site. So this is just one example of many that are out there. So from a commercial perspective, and then this is also the wind energy one that I was telling you about before, is Great River Energy's Revolt initiative offers the ability to power a plug-in electric with 100% wind energy for the lifetime of the vehicle, and it requires no additional cost. This is what this shocked me. I mean, so you can only imagine that what consumers would think when you have this in front of them and you go, hey, if you're in Grand Rivers Energy, guess what? It's free. So going back to that, cost of ownership perspective is you can get by that and show the customer. It's just becoming the expert. And anytime you show that field of expertise to a customer, you're going to start building trust with them. So now I clicked on the personal vehicle owner or driver, right? And now I click on the search feature here. Now, this is where I said before, there's nine of them, of each of the electrical supply companies that have some type of utility private incentive that's out there, okay? And you can see that if I click on, I'll just take this, I did Connexus already. Let me do Xcel Energy. So Xcel Energy offers an electric vehicle rate and time of use. So this is an example of a rate options. So that's one. Some of them have a charger purchase incentive. Some of them are rate. That's the rate example. We already talked about the wind energy one. Here's another charger rebate. Offers a time of use. There you go. And offers up to $500 for the installation of a level 1 or level 2. So you can see this website has a lot of great information for you to use. There's also another one, and I'm going to bring that up here real quick, is as part of those links is the Clipper Creek website. And while we do offer special discounts through Snap-on, you have the ability to select any charger that's a fast charger and a level 2 charger as part of our program. So you don't necessarily have to use Snap-on. Obviously, they are a preferred vendor of ours, but we want you to basically take advantage of the best possible resource and purchases that you can get with it. So if you ever come to Clipper Creek, which you'll have that link to, there's a buyer's guide and there's a residential, workplace, and commercial. Jerry, you were talking about the charger banks, right? Now, if you click on the commercial and public side, right, we found that in one of the pictures here, let me see if I can find it, they offer a charger bank service. There it is. So you were talking about charger banks and getting customers to come in regularly. here's a little installation. To have a charger bank system set up. Again, you're thinking, I'm sure what we thought was these are thousands of dollars, right? Well, actually they're not. And let me show you. So one thing you can do, and actually you can do this for any customer that has a question, and you can go right in here to the buyer's guide for residential home, and I'll show you an example. So you scroll down here to the Kia, and you're going to choose your model. In this case, I'm going to click on the Nero, not the PHEV, and it pulls up the Nero, tells the type of electrical, it says the acceptance rate, the battery size, and guess what? I have 3 suggestions. Here's 3 alternatives. The lowest one is $469, and that's a level 2 charger. Now that's $469, not including installation, and it gives you the mile range per hour of charging that the customer's vehicle. So within an overnight charge, customers back up to the full 239 miles.
Yep, and that answers the one question about the approximate cost to the customers to recharge their vehicles.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are going to, I know, Jerry, we talked about this, but we are going to put this out there for both in a printed version and also on our YouTube channel as well.
Yep.
But, you know, we definitely want to jump into some Q&A now. But listen, in more than anything else, you have to jump online and start doing some of the basic researches. Use some of the websites we have. There's even the government now has on their fuel economy site a comparison sheet, so you can compare a Nero to a Tesla to a Volt. They have that now. They do it for us, even though we have it on our website too. But it's amazing what's out there when you start really researching it. What else did I miss, Jer? Anything there?
No, I think obviously there's a lot of information available, and there's a lot of resources, and I think as we all kind of start to digest this information, it's going to generate more questions and moving down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see here, Jared. If you're a multi-line dealer, will other manufacturers' charging stations count towards the charger requirement? And that's from Dave Stewart. Dave, I'd like to say yes, but the answer really is no. I mean, I'm going to caveat that with we need to make sure that the charger locations are convenient, one for the Kia technicians and 2 for the customers that are coming into the Kia store. Last thing that I know that your general managers and your dealers want to see is, I mean, yeah, if you have multi-lines, defection to you is not an issue, but we want to make sure Kia stays loyal to Kia. That's the whole reason why we would like to see them in and around the Kia buildings and in the Kia servicing area. Right, Jer? I mean,
yeah.
Simply put.
And again, though, the one thing is it's not black or white. Really what it comes down to is what is the setup. We have some multi-car line dealers where everything is separated, across the street on the big campuses. And then we have others that are basically one right next door to each other. So there'd be a little bit of difference. The more complicated answer is get your DPSM and DSM involved and to see what the setup is. And then we will figure out just exactly what the needs are and the requirements are. So the short answer is yes, we want it dedicated to Kia, but the long answer is let's take a look and see what the setup is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. Absolutely does. And then the other question that came up real quick was, what's the cost to charge? Well, you know, if you look at it, we've got it right here. And this actually came from the federal site itself. It's 98 cents for 25 miles. So if you do the 238, I mean, you're what, 10-hour charge at $10? Yeah.
And again, it really, the difficulty with it's an estimate, but as you touched on before, Walter, is where are they getting their energy from? Really, is what it comes down to is the estimated cost to recharge, right? It's what are they paying for that energy? You mentioned the wind power that'll actually cover that. There's other things that kind of come into that equation to determine just exactly what the cost to recharge will be at home.
Absolutely. So just to reiterate, we do want the chargers for Kia. That's basically what it comes down to.
But John Flanagan asked another question about, what about customers that live in apartments? Many apartment complexes have, parking garages, and, just like our corporate building has a parking garage that has that level 2 charger available. Those of you that have taken the web-based training for EV, there is actually a section on it, is identifying the customer's needs. And one of the questions is a customer that lives in an apartment and parks on the street, are they an ideal candidate for an EV? And quite honestly, they probably aren't. And that may be a customer that's not likely to be eligible or the great candidate to sell or lease an EV, simply because they don't have the access to charge at their convenience.
Let's see what else we've got here. I'm glad we're getting a lot of these questions, Jerry, because this is the myth. This is the unknown that we're all uneasy with. Mm-hmm. And really what we have to do with, we've talked about this over and over. EVs have to be part of your business. That's what they have. They have to be part of your business. I mean, yes, it's new for us, but you know what? If we don't make it part of it now, and we don't start taking actions to, one, keep customers loyal, that's really going to be the case. We have to keep that loyalty. Prepaid maintenance sounds like it's a holy grail on an EV vehicle if you think about it. Why would I want that customer defecting to go have, because by the time you get through all the tire rotations, do a PPM for tires. Why not? We've got those. That gets that guarantees the customer coming back in. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean,
and Brad brings up a good point with respect to those that are apartment dwellers. Again, part of the question is identifying their needs. Do they live in an apartment where they park? But the other thing is, do they already have access to the chargers? So some of these customers may have access to these chargers at work that enable them to do the full charge. Again, there's a lot of things that are no longer black and white to determine. And obviously, if a customer comes in and is really interested in the EV, we just want to make sure that they have the resources available to them. Another question came up, is Kia going to be offering to sell EV chargers to customers for home installation? And again, you touched on it. We're not going to be necessarily. We can certainly direct them to the resources that are available as to where they can, within their states, what resources are available, what companies are available, and what rebates are available based on the installation from the companies they choose.
I mean, Jerry, that's even Home Depot. Even Home Depot has them now. But,
yeah.
If you look at the cost now, the chargers are $469, right? I mean, we have to look at which customers are going to be purchasing, right? Is it for every vehicle? Is it for every customer? No, but $469 plus installation, $1,500 $1,000 for installation is expensive, especially at a home install, because even if if they have to run from the electrical box all the way to the front on a 6-gauge wire, I mean, you're not talking $1,000 for installation. Right. If you're $500 for installation, maybe. Yeah. But the point being is that we overestimated that as well. So it's important to think of. Now, here's another alternative, and something that we didn't have here, and I just got a text message from one of the DPSMs. Why not have the parts department sell them to the customer? And why not have a contractor available?
That's entirely possible. Again, our goal right now is to get the dealers ramped up to sell EVs and service them, right? And just like anything else, that is part of the thinking and the things that we're researching right now on the backside in terms of that additional level of support to these customers. So there is a possibility, but again, when you think about it, we've got to figure out what works best for the customers right now. And from a cost standpoint, inevitably, most dealers are going to want to mark up that charger. So I think really where it likely is, it's possible that for those opportunities, but we will likely, there's a lot of things that are going to be coming down the pike as it relates to what happens after we sell the car, or at the point, how do we set the customer up for success?
I just pulled up Amazon real quick, Jer, and look at this. There's a whole bunch of different chargers that are out there. Real quick, you know, I said $469 for the Clear Creek, but look at this. I mean, they've even got. No, obviously you want to make sure that you have some skill sets and qualifications, but you know, there's a lot that's out there. Again, it's the research and the length of time you want to take to go through this and help your customers and be the experts, right? So, but Mike, you know, to your point, why would not we sell our own chargers? I don't disagree with you, but obviously, and we're working with. Actually, Brad just mentioned we're trying to work on a vendor right now for a DIO, dealer installed option charger set.
Yep.
So that is actually already in the works. So there you go. Great ideas.
Yeah.
So any other questions that we missed here by chance?
I don't think so. Other than that, the man behind the curtain, Mr. Brad Holt, giving us much needed information. I don't see anybody asking any questions. So I think a lot of that, generally you would think, well, that means we did a great job, you know, delivering the information. But I think really what it comes down to is there's so much information that we're offering right now, and that it's a shift in the mindset. And that's really what it comes down to, is that we've got a customer base that we have to start to prepare for. And we have the other aspect of it is getting up to speed and ready with the charging and all the other things that take place the moment the acknowledgement occurs. So the sooner the better. And again, the more people that are trained in the dealership, the better. And that's really, you know, that's one of the bigger takeaways in terms of the web-based training. It's not difficult. It's great information for the support staff, parts managers, service managers. And, you know, from a sales standpoint, the more salespeople that are in a position to sell EVs, the better.
You know, Jared, I just was texted a question too, and I want to bring this up. Will you provide a manual for a customer clinic? Tom, that's a great idea. But I want to bring something to everyone's attention just quickly, because one of the most in here, if you've ever looked at the manual of a Nero EV and looking at the owner's manual, it is so incredibly useful for a salesperson to use and a service consultant to use on the service drive as a follow-up to their first visit, is sitting down and really walking the customer through it. That vehicle has so many options and so many safety characteristics that the customers aren't going to remember it in a sales presentation at the time of delivery. It is one of the most, I mean, there's just so much information. And either if you do a delivery at home, you've got the customer's attention right then and there. I would set time up to walk a customer through every aspect of this vehicle to the nth detail. Now, will they remember it at the time of delivery because, you know, it's all bright, new, shiny items? But the point being is, yes, we've got to come up with a way to keep the customer engaged, and having the vehicle apps and knowing the systems is what's going to help keep us and keep that link to the customer going.
Walter, to your point, I think really what we may experience with this customer is might be the customer that may be just as informed as your sales staff in terms of what they're looking for. So it is critical that we do our due diligence to all try to be the experts when it comes to EV, because these customers that are likely in that mindset or in that shopping habit are going to be well-informed customers. That's typically.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Jerry, too. The loyalty aspect of what we need to do here is going to be, it's going to be what's our differentiator with the customers long term. It has to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the industry's already stated that the Nero EV is the one that is competitive with the Tesla, right? Of all those choices out there right now, we are already we're in the ballpark. Really, what it comes down to is now how do we differentiate ourselves besides product by level of service at the dealership level?
And before we finish up, because I know I don't see any other questions coming in, Jerry and I want to encourage you, for the dealers on here, you know, the $12,000, there isn't another manufacturer that I know of, at least not $12,000 right now, that's doing this. I've talked to several dealers over the last 2 days. especially ones that have multi-lines, and nobody's done this yet, not to the level of support. It's something our management team, our executive management team said, if we're doing this, we need to do it with a bang, and this is the bang we could come up with. But it is for a limited time. If you have reservations of wanting to jump in, just consider the fact that, yes, it's up to $12,000 max. But if you think of the cost of the chargers and what's going on out there, if you just decide to do the bank of chargers or whatever you want to do there, but to pay for those chargers is something to consider. Long term, we're in the business. Jerry showed you the slides. It's 11 vehicles by 2025 worldwide, but our first one's here. You know,
and again, just the last thing on the requirement for the chargers is the one thing that we want to make sure with those multi-line franchises. It's not that we want you to buy one for buying one's sake. It's the idea that a lot of the older chargers that have been out there aren't necessarily compliant. They're outdated to what the technology requires on our cars today. So that's another thing to think about. So from a compliance standpoint. So, but again, a lot of those answers and questions we can be addressed with your district sales and service manager team to see what is the best option and what's already compliant and what may not be. So I think, Walter, we let everybody get 8 minutes back on their Friday morning to go off and do it. And we'll get this deck out to our district manager team and they'll send it out to you. Again, as always, this webinar will be on the Central Region's YouTube channel. So, really appreciate everyone taking the time out this morning to join us for this conversation.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. And don't forget to acknowledge the keyword.
That's it.